Well, would you pay more for certain sales taxes for your child to get full-day pre-K and to give teachers a raise? Well, that's a conversation Texas Democrats want to start at the Capitol. It's part of a $14.5 billion plan, but the proposed state budget only has room for $7 billion. The Texas Kids First plan calls for the state to require full-day pre-K increase, the per-student money to school districts, more money to educate children in poverty, more money to educate students who speak English as a second language, and pay raises for teachers. The plan would also ask voters to approve a constitutional amendment next election to raise the homestead exemption for property taxes from $25,000 to $50,000, forcing the state to pick up a large share of the cost of education. Now, the proposal also includes $3.78 billion for teacher pay and benefits, around the same amount Senate Republican leaders have proposed in the across-the-board $5,000 raises for full-time classroom teachers. It does not include two policy items that may be included in Republican-filed legislation, that being merit pay for teachers or paying schools more for higher student test scores. Now, Republican leaders are expected to offer their own omnibus public education bill, expected to spend far less than the Democratic plan. And since the Texas legislature is Republican controlled in the House and Senate, we wanted to get input from the Texas GOP, and that's why we're joined by James Dickey, who is the chairman for the state Republican Party. Thanks for being with us.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Now, this episode focuses on public education, but since Texas was in the news recently with President Trump down in El Paso, I'd like to get your take on what role Texas will play in the 2020 elections, especially after what many would consider an impressive midterm performance by Congressman Beto O'Rourke.
Yes, Texas is going to play a key role in 2020. In fact, one of the messages that I've been working hard to deliver to Republicans across the country is that Texas cannot be taken for granted, and hopefully no one ever does. So the best thing to see is a politician who takes seriously the need to earn everyone's vote every election, and we certainly have a lot of great leaders who do that. I mean, Governor Abbott did a fantastic job of taking his reelection very, very seriously in spite of his high popularity, the great job he has done, and frankly, a not that impressive opponent. And yet he made it clear that he realized that he needed to earn everyone's vote. Well, the same is going to go for the president. And with the way the Electoral College works, the president could win every single state that he won in 2016. If he loses Texas, he's at 268, and it takes 270 to win. He will have lost.
And you mentioned him just a moment ago, but in his recent State of the State address, as you know, Governor Greg Abbott declared he wants to limit soaring property taxes and improve funding for Texas public schools. However, when Texas currently funds most of its public education with property taxes, how can both be accomplished?
Well, there are a lot of ways to accomplish both. And in fact, one of the challenges, one of the problems we have is that under the Democrat-led legislatures of the past, and most people don't remember this because our memories are kind of short and we wipe bad memories out of our mind, Democrats controlled the Texas House until 2003. And so under those prior Democrat-led legislatures, that's when we came up with this horrible mishmash that is Robin Hood, that makes essentially an unconstitutional statewide property tax. That is never what our founders intended. It's not what our Constitution allows. And so there are plenty of ways to change things up, and frankly should be changed up, so that whether it's an expansion of sales tax or an increase in some other tax, there are ways to fund the maintenance and operations of our schools in a completely fair, completely statewide level that also reduces this crazy scenario we have now where people never really actually own their homes, that they're paying rent to the government, in many cases more than the cost of their mortgage. And even renters, a significant portion of their rent ends up being to reimburse the property owners for property tax. And that's just a situation that we need to do away with.
Right. You just mentioned the GOP is calling for lawmakers to abolish the maintenance and operations school property tax, known as the Robin Hood tax. Why does the Republican Party in Texas believe this is so crucial?
Well, because we are seeing affordability is one of the big drives for people to come to Texas for growth, for opportunity. And if you start destroying the affordability of life on a day-to-day basis, and if you start increasing the disparity between school districts, you end up with the worst of both worlds. You end up with a suffering economy and with those who are most in need suffering the most. And the Texas legislature has a chance to fix all of that in this. Now, it's not easy. These are difficult trade-offs and difficult choices that have to be made, but this is important. And to his credit, to their credit, the governor, Speaker Bonin, Lieutenant Governor, they all seem very clearly focused on this being the most important thing, property tax relief and more fair and reasonable funding for schools. Both of that are critical things in this budget go around.
And what do you think about teacher pay? What priority would that be set at?
Well, I can tell you one of the offensive things about the scenario we currently have in Texas is when you see a majority of the money spent on schools not even being spent in the classrooms. And so even those of us who think education is so important and that it's an important way out, I mean, for myself, education was the key of changing from my growing up in poverty to graduating from Stanford University. Well, that was good schools in Fort Worth, Texas, and that made that possible. And those of us who believe in schools and believe in the potential of schools do not think that the potential in schools is reached, or the potential for kids in schools are reached by multi-million-dollar swimming facilities or tens of millions of dollars football facilities. It is work in the classroom. And so certainly having teacher pay at a competitive rate to what's available for those similar skills in the market part of the economy is a completely reasonable thing.
And finally, Mr. Dickey, again, Republican-controlled state House and Senate. At the end of this session, what else do you hope they get to tackle beyond education?
Well, I think there are some other things that if we address can help make some fundamental changes down the line. So always there's a push to by government just naturally to kind of do away with freedom. And so any gains we can make towards protecting freedom are important. So whether that's reducing the number of conditions where you have to have a permission slip for the government to earn a living or to defend yourself, that's really important, and that kind of expansion of freedom is a good thing. Also, the times when government uses taxpayer resources against the taxpayer, that is certainly important. And so one of our priorities is in not allowing for taxpayer money to go to paying lobbyists to lobby for more taxpayer money. And I mean, that's such a ludicrous idea that every time I bring it up, people who aren't in the business of government are shocked that that's even allowed. But sadly it is, and hopefully that'll be fixed this session as well.
Texas Republican Party Chairman James Dickey, thanks so much.
Thank you.
We want to increase teacher pay in the state of Texas.
But how and by how much? Those are the questions being asked at the Texas legislature. What one nonprofit organization focusing on improving Texas education policy says should be done.